What's up, guys? Today is Tuesday, August 15th, 2017. This is Philip Enriquez, and you're listening to the Say What You Like Sports podcast. Now, not a lot is going on in the headlines in the sports world today. In fact, most of these headlines for the last few weeks have been off the field news. You're hearing a lot about these players off the field in the headlines, whether it's bad or good. So that kind of brings me to this question that I just been wanting to ask you guys out there, the audience. I want to shoot this to you guys. You guys feel free. Call in. Give me your thoughts. Give me your opinions. Give me your theories. Whatever you got. Give it to me. I'll post it up here on the station. So my question is this. Is it fair for the general public to expect pro athletes to be role models for our children? And I find this question to be very interesting because there's a lot of things that go into that. For instance, let's just go back to someone like Charles Barkley, who has been quoted time and time again as saying, I'm not being paid to be a role model. Parents should be role models. And, as much as I do agree with that, when they sign a contract as a pro athlete, there's nothing that says, and you must be a role model. But then again, there is such a thing as an implied contract in business, like a doctor-patient rights. Obviously, your doctor doesn't have to sign anything to say that he's going to take care of you, but it's an implied contract when you enter his office as a patient. So maybe there's something similar, or at least somewhat to that effect, as a pro athlete being a role model for children who aspire to be pro athletes themselves one day. So just wondering, what do you think is going on here? Do you think it is fair for the public to expect these pro athletes to be role models? And maybe that will kind of help us to understand how we feel on some of these off-the-field issues with players, whether bad or good, like Ezekiel Elliott, Tom Brady, Colin Kaepernick, the whole thing, whatever it is. Do you guys feel that these pro athletes are role models? Hit me up, call into the station. I will post them up here for the next day or two here. Thanks for listening. I will look forward to hearing your call-ins.
Say what you like. Phil, what's up, man? T. Scott checking in with you. Should pro athletes be role models? Good question. There isn't an expectation for them to be role models, but at the same time, there is an expectation for them to be role models. Our popular sports, baseball, basketball, football, you have young kids, children that love these athletes. And I would think, or it would behoove them to try to set an example, because a lot of these athletes have kids themselves. So it's not an expectation for athletes to be good role models, but at the same time, it is an expectation for them to be role models because of the love of the game that the kids play. Most of the athletes that play, or professional athletes, grew up loving the game that they play as a kid themselves. So, yes.
Say what you like. What's going on, Daddy? Great question. Yes, these players are expected to be role models, man. In this day and age, I guess they're dubbing it the millennium era, whatever you need to say. So much information is out now to the public. They were talking about when O.J. Simpson got out, how he had never been out in the world like this before. Now cameras gonna follow him everywhere, as opposed to 40 years ago, he was a stud, all-star. Yeah, he was on TV doing commercials, but he could have that quiet, private, second life, if you will. But absolutely, man, and no need to go into depth of detail on it. I just think, like you said, implied contract, like the doctor and patient relationship. If you're out there, you're on TV, you're doing commercials, obviously there's some counterintuitive stuff there, or double standards as far as beer commercials, blah blah. But let me know what you think, man. Balls deep, nappy nap. Holla at you, boy.
What's up? Say what you feel. Dustin over here at Storage Center. And I think, parents and the pro athletes, whether they like it or not, the pro athletes are role models. They're in the spotlight 24/7. If something personal goes wrong with them, even something little, maybe not even personal, or something that they say like Kaepernick or do or stand for something, they're going to hear about it. And kids look up to these pro athletes like LeBron James. So when we seen LeBron tweet out today about what's happened in Charlottesville, obviously I think these kids are going to take effect, and I think they're going to, follow in a player like LeBron's footsteps or like Kaepernick's footsteps, and they're going to stand up for what's right because these guys are in the spotlight 24/7. And so I definitely think that they are role models, whether they like it or not.
Hey, just wanted to call in on the role model situation. I think that they shouldn't be forced to be role models. I feel like they should be exactly who they are at all times, because kids need examples, and sometimes kids need to see that if you do bad things happen. These guys that are quote unquote not good role models, they're suffering consequences, game suspended, losing money, kicked out the league. There's a lot of bad repercussions, and kids need to see that if you don't handle yourself as a good overall person or a good human, there's repercussions. And that if somebody wants to step up and be a role model in their position and take accountability, that's a good thing, because that's a good example. So nobody should be forced to do anything but be themselves, and those will hopefully help kids see how to prepare well for their future.
Honestly, SayWhatchaPhil, I feel like they're already role models because they already get looked up in a highlight. It's like a high limelight by the kids out there. So yes, they should be role models in that sense, but everyone's unique and they're all different. So really, it's up to the player. I have no problem. Some people are more flashy, some people are more quiet. It's just their personality. I have no problem with either one. Obviously, if you do the wrong things, like drug use and steroid use and just being a dope to your teammates or something, that's wrong. But yeah, it really should be just a good guy always prevails in the end.
First off, I want to start off by saying thank you to each and every one of you guys that took the time out and called into the station and gave me your thoughts regarding pro athletes being role models and if we should continue to have that expectation for them. T. Scott called in first. Great call. He said there isn't an expectation for these pro athletes, but there is an expectation for these pro athletes. Might not make a lot of sense on paper, but when you really sit back and think about it, it makes a lot of sense. I'm with you, man, because in the end, it's always about the kids, right? The kids are the next NBA and NFL football players 15 years from now, so it should always be about them. And I think these athletes need to take note of that. Nappy Nap from Balls Deep, man, he said role models for sure. He gave the thumbs up on that. He said, the cameras follow them. They're on commercials, and when they take those endorsement deals and things like of that nature, you know what? You are now a role model. It's just an implied contract. Dustin from Sports Center called in. He said pro athletes are role models because the kids look up to them. And, he mentioned Colin Kaepernick and LeBron James, who are players from the NBA and NFL that consistently are always standing up for what they believe in. And I think that's a strong message to send to kids, because you know what? You want these kids not to grow up timid. You want them to stand up for the causes that they believe in. And those are two athletes that you definitely show it. All NBA Podcast gave us a little bit of a different viewpoint there, who said, there's really no expectation for them to be examples, but there are examples. Let them be who they want to be. And I agree with that too, man. I really believe, you can't force anybody to do anything, whether it's role models or anything else for that matter. But you did bring up a really good point when you said even bad examples are examples. And, you can take a player that's messing up, getting kicked out of sports, take a Greg Hardy. Hey, that's how not to act. You know what? You don't put your hands on women. You don't get involved in drugs. You don't get involved in drinking, because sooner or later, nobody's going to put up with you, and you're going to be out of the league. And there was a guy that had talent, and it's sad to see a talent like that out of the league, but it's not sad to see somebody who just doesn't learn and just never wanted to change, never felt any remorse for what they did. And now, he got what's coming to him, and he is an example. He's definitely ain't no role model, but he's an example. So I'm with you on that, All NBA Podcast. And then my man KT called in. KT back from Thailand, man. I'm glad you had a safe trip back. Calls in and gives his thought on role models, saying basically they are role models because no matter what, kids look up to these dudes. It's natural. When I was a kid, I know I had my role models, whether they were good ones or they were bad ones. I'm a Cowboys fan. My favorite player is Michael Irvin. Not exactly the best role model for kids. I mean, we all know his off-the-field adventures. But I really respected him because, you know, he challenged his teammates, and you always heard about he was the hardest working player on the team. He never wanted to stop practice. He was the first one there, last one out kind of guy. But, you know, when it came to his nightlife, you know, he was doing a lot. We'll just keep it at that. And, you know, I always liked those kind of players that, you know what, you want to play hard, but you got to work hard. You know, work hard first and then play hard. And as long as you're playing, don't get in the way of your work, then everything's all good. So, you know, and that was a dangerous message to send to a kid like me, because I was like, hey, you know what, as long as I work hard, I could do whatever I want. And, you know, sometimes that got me in a little bit of trouble, like Michael Irvin, you know, maybe not that bad, but, you know, it's so, without a doubt, these athletes, whether they want to be or not, are role models for these kids. But one thing that I want to say is, as a father, we should never, ever expect pro athletes to be the number one role model for our children's lives, because as a parent, it's up to you to show them examples like the All NBA podcast brought up and said, hey, be like this guy because he does positive things for himself and others around him, like this, and that. And don't be like that guy because he got kicked out of the league because he did negative thing 1, 2, 3 here. So in the end, it's up to us to guide these kids. But without a doubt, these pro athletes, man, they are role models whether they like it or not. What is going on, everybody? Today is Wednesday, August 16th, 2017. Once again, you're tuned in to the Say What You Like Sports Podcast. We're doing our thing here on Anchor. My name is Philip Enriquez, and yesterday we had a great discussion. We had some great call-ins regarding pro athletes and the expectations that we place on them to be role models for the kids. And I want to continue on with a little bit more of that talk. I thought it was some good talk. We got some different opinions, and they were both valid on both sides. But let me talk about something right now. I'll be posting up a couple more calls regarding role models. But there's something that I want to talk about right now, and that's this whole mess going on between the NFL and Ezekiel Elliott. And in my opinion, all this is exposing is just how bad of role models. Not only is Ezekiel Elliott being a bad role model, but so is the NFL. And I'm about to explain why. Here on this next segment, I want to take my time and talk a little bit about how I believe that both the NFL and Ezekiel Elliott are just exposing themselves as both being bad role models for children who could be looking up to them. Now, this whole appeal process is going on. The hearing scheduled for August 29th, I believe. But now all this information is leaking out from both camps, the Ezekiel Elliott camp and the NFL, and they're standing their ground. And I don't blame them. I mean, they got to do what they got to do. But as far as being role models and the subject we've been talking about here on the station the last couple of days, it's a bad look for both parties. More evidence is coming out. In fact, the big evidence that came out against Ezekiel Elliott's accuser, the NFLPA, has been accused of leaking this by the NFL, that in the 16-page report from the NFL that regarding the suspension for Ezekiel Elliott, there's an exhibit number 74 that states that they got a forensic sweep of the accuser's phone, and pretty much it has her talking back and forth with a friend of hers on how they're going to set Zeke up and blackmail him. And this was taken from her phone, and the dates on these texts were in September of 2016 sometime. Thompson was saying things like, what if I sold mine and Ezekiel Elliott's sex video? Wow, sex videos are now coming up in the conversation. And the friend says, We would be millionaires. We could blackmail him with that. Thompson says, I want to, bro. The friend says, let's do it. Thompson says, scared? And the friend says, expletive. I'd be like, look, give me 10K or I'll just sell our sex videos for the same amount flat. Me and my friends trying to go on vacation and get a boob job. Thompson replies, 10K, girl? I want 20K. Go big or go home. And her friend finally responds, that's fine too. So just more dirt being thrown on the NFL and Ezekiel Elliott being thrown back and forth here. And the accuser, Tiffany Thompson. It's just unfortunate on all sides. So then the NFL hits back. And Joe Lockhart released a statement. He's the NFL Executive Vice President of Communications. And he released a statement also. Over the past few days, we've received multiple reports of the NFLPA spreading derogatory information to the media about the victim in Ezekiel Elliott's discipline case. It's a common tactic to attempt to prove the innocence of the accused by discrediting the victim. In this case, Ms. Thompson. When coming forward to report such abuse, common or not, these tactics are shameful. Efforts to shame and blame victims are often what prevent people from coming forward to report violence and or seek help in the first place. So again, let the mud slinging begin between these two. Nobody's being civil. All the dirt is going to be thrown back and forth between Ezekiel Elliott's camp and the NFL's camp. Now here's my problem with them both being bad role models. Zeke, you're my boy. You're a cowboy. I want to support you, but there's one thing keeping me from being up here and completely having your back, and that's that when you released that statement the other day, you never straight up proclaimed any innocence. You never said, I did not cause those marks that the leaked photos came from. So either A, I need an explanation on why those marks were there, or I need you to proclaim complete innocence on leaving any of those marks. Because if not, no matter how bad of an apple this girl is, that doesn't mean you didn't lay your hands on her. And if you want the support from your fan base, then you need to proclaim your innocence. In my opinion, that's what I've done. Again, I know there's legal matters. I know there's attorneys saying don't say anything yet. So I get it. But just as far as public perception and fan opinions, I think that statement would go a long way. Now, with the NFL knew this evidence and still put the 6-game suspension on Ezekiel Elliott. And in my opinion, man, this is a bad look for the NFL because they're trying so hard to be the role model. Hey, look, we're putting domestic violence, we're putting a premium on it, and we're punishing our players hard for it. But what about the Giants kicker last year? How hard of a hand did you give on that? I'm about to run out of time, so let's get this going on in the next segment as well. Okay, so continuing on with these NFL and Ezekiel Elliott being bad role models, again, in my opinion, is the fact that the NFL is trying to come down on Ezekiel Elliott with a heavy hand, 6 games right off the bat, because it's more likely than not, in their opinion, that Ezekiel Elliott caused harm, physical harm, to Tiffany Thompson. And again, he hasn't went out and straight out, at least not in any recent statements, proclaim his innocence. But more, he's just throwing dirt on the accuser. And if there's dirt to be thrown, there's dirt to be thrown. But like I said, that doesn't mean he didn't put his hands on her. And it's just a bad look as a role model. But the NFL should be above all this. I talked about Josh Brown, the kicker for the New York Giants. I guess it was reported, and I don't have exact numbers here, but I think around 20 times that he beat up his wife and a 1-game suspension. So, see, the NFL wants you to think that they care about domestic violence, but they really don't give a damn. And that's what I mean by they're exposing themselves as being bad role models. Oh, because if they had the chance, they'd sweep it under the rug again. All we have to do is go back to the whole Ray Rice incident, where they had that tape. They said the tape was never received by their offices. They had the right address and everything. And yet, they saw the tape and decided to give Ray Rice a 2-game suspension. And so now they're doing this whole makeup call by putting the heavy hand on Ezekiel Elliott with some sketchy evidence and a sketchy witness. And so it's just wrong, and they're exposing themselves as they're trying to be reactionary to public opinion. But in that, they're forgetting about fairness, and they're forgetting about keeping their investigation on the up and up. Preserving the quality of it. What they want to do is win the battle of public perception. We don't support domestic violence. We don't stand for it. But yet, they really do, because if they were really offended by domestic violence, the moment they saw that Ray Rice tape, they would have suspended him for a minimum of 6 games to a year, which they tried to do retroactively. Again, just another mix-up by the NFL, trying to retroactively punish a player that should have been punished in the first place. So if you really do care about protecting women and helping women out, then you should have took the stand the first time, not after the backlash, not after your job was being threatened, Mr. Goodell. It's a bad look as a role model for the NFL. Do the right thing. Have some integrity. Integrity, in my opinion, is doing the right thing when nobody's looking. But the NFL only wants to do the right thing when everybody's looking. Look at me, guys. We're doing the right thing. Having a heavy hand on a sketchy case. Even though we should have had a heavy hand on some hardcore evidence, like a videotape showing a close-handed fist to a woman's face, knocking her out unconscious. Yeah, that's no big thing, just 2 games. So the inconsistencies with the NFL really show just how terrible of a role model they're being as a league. And Ezekiel Elliott, I'm a Cowboys fan, but you're not off the hook either. At the very least, you are being irresponsible. I really think he needs a life coach. I know he's a kid, I know he's young, but that's no excuse to constantly find yourself in these matters, lifting up the girl's bra, no matter where the place was, no matter where. You have to understand, kids are looking up to you. You are a role model. I have a daughter. I wouldn't want her seeing guys treat her like that or anything like that. So I completely understand. At the very least, the NFL should have had just suspended him based on that. Give him a couple of games for that. We don't like that. That goes against the personal conduct policy. But to straight up call the man a woman beater without any hardcore evidence and a sketchy witness, that's something else in itself. So again, I just feel like the NFL and Ezekiel Elliott are going to continue to expose themselves as just knuckleheads. You know what? I don't know. I do hope, as a Cowboys fan, being honest, that the suspension gets reduced. I think it was a little bit too much of a heavy hand. But again, this guy needs a timeout. Zeke definitely needs a timeout. He needs to sit back and think about the situations he puts himself. And I'm not even talking about the domestic violence. I'm talking about the St. Patrick's Day parade. I'm talking about the alleged bar fights. Sit it out. Think about it. And let's hope that you guys can both be better role models for these kids in the future.
What's up, Say What You Like? Yes, I absolutely believe that athletes are role models. There are several examples that come to mind immediately. One of them is what's going on with young African-American males in their hair. That alone tells me that absolutely these athletes are role models. So initially everybody kind of had, I don't know, maybe like fades and stuff like that, right? But as soon as Odell Beckham came out and started to, do these amazing one-hand catches, for one, kids no longer wanted to catch with 2 hands. At that point, catching with 2 hands is no longer cool, right? At some point, it was cool to go up over somebody and catch it with 2 hands like Randy Moss did. And that's just one example as well. But outside of that, now it's better to catch with 1 hand and have a flashy hairdo, right? And that's all because of what's going on with Odell Beckham and the way he does his hair. So think about that. So absolutely, these athletes are role models. They just need to really take that role seriously because they influence a ton.
Phil, what's up, man? Just wanted to say I really dig the new logo and the new color that you went with for the new look here on Anchor, and I hope all is well. I'm really excited to release our talk about the Clippers in the next couple of weeks here, but I just wanted to call in and wish you a good day and hope everything's going well with you, man. Take care.
Say what you feel, KT back on the mic. 31 days later, here I am. And came at the right time. It's football season just right around the corner. Just a little preseason. I don't want to really give any thoughts about your show right now. It's like I got to catch up on my NFL stuff myself. So give me a couple days, but I'll definitely have some more good call-ins and help out your station. Sorry about that. And yeah, just really appreciate it.
Yeah, there's not much, I could do right now but support him. And I know that's what this team's going to do, this coaching staff is going to do. We're going to support him. We're going to let the people above that take care of whatever they've got. We've got a great group of running backs that have plenty of experience that are going to step up. So for us right now, it's just to have his back and just to move forward. As I said, we've got great running backs. Darren McFadden, Alfred Morris, those guys who have had a lot of success in this league for a long time. So it's just an opportunity for them to come in and get more reps in that time off. I leave that up to the coaches. That's not necessarily in my hands to create more game plans for me running. But if I had to guess, I would say I wouldn't think so. Just in the fashion that I said, we have the running backs that have done it in this league for a long time. So it's not a panic here. A huge impact. Obviously just his ability to run the ball. And as you said, making the defense load the box, giving us one-on-ones outside. And not only that, just keeping our defense off the field and keeping their defense on the field for a long time. But that's not just Zeke. That's the offensive line. That's the receivers blocking. We still have all those guys in this time off. We have amongst players talked within ourselves. We've all supported Zeke, and we're going to do that all the way through it. And as I said, there's not much we can do now but support him and move forward and do the best we can. He's good. He's been positive energy. It's something that's done. As I said, I can't do anything. He can't do anything. It's done. I'm sure they'll appeal, and that's kind of out of his hands as well there. So he's been positive spirit, been the same Zeke, and that's good for him. It's good for this team. I'm definitely going to play this week. How much or how many reps or how long is up to the coaches. But I'm excited to get in there. I wanted to play obviously last week, so finally to get in there, it'd be good to be back in AT&T Stadium for the first time.
And so, just as I predicted, the mudslinging continues. As I read off in an earlier segment today, the NFL's statement on the Ezekiel Elliott leaks, the NFLPA returns with a station. We got our first punch and now our first counterpunch. So the NFLPA statement reads as follows. The public statement issued on behalf of every NFL owner is a lie. The NFLPA categorically denies the accusations made in this statement. We know the league office has a history of being exposed for its lack of credibility. This is another example of the NFL's hypocrisy on display and an attempt to create a sideshow to distract from their own failings in dealing with such serious issues. They should be ashamed for stooping to new lows. And I gotta admit, I'm kind of with the NFLPA here, and props them for finally, just serving up the truth, because the NFL is a bunch of hypocrisy, and they have created sideshow after sideshow to distract them from their own failings, like the earlier segment when I mentioned their whole debacle with the Ray Rice and the giant kicker. Even the Tom Brady thing, 4 games for deflating footballs, and then they made it a whole sideshow over deflated football. 4 games. Even if you believe Tom Brady was guilty or innocent, 4 games? Are we serious? So it just shows, at least I like that the NFLPA is standing up to the bully that is the NFL. But like I said, this mudslinging is going to continue, and expect Zeke, his camp, and the NFLPA to get some mud slinged in their face soon. I'm looking for the next counterpunch, because like I said, nobody in here is really innocent, and it's all bad for all teams. It's just a shame, but we haven't even gotten to the appeal yet, and we already have these strong public statements being made. Let's see what happens tomorrow in round 2, right? It's about role models. I'm feeding into the fire myself, I gotta admit, talking about the Ezekiel Elliott and the NFL and how they're both knuckleheads, they're both really hypocrites, and they're both not really role models for a lot of these kids. But earlier on the station, I posted up on a segment the first interview done by Dak Prescott in regards to the 6-game suspension on his teammate Ezekiel Elliott. But I just want to take a moment to say, Dak, is an example of a fine role model. I mean, here's a guy who's got a good head on his shoulders. He's faced many, many adversities throughout his life, and he's always strived for the best, and in the end, he's somebody you can say is a hard worker, and he's a winner. And I think there's a perfect example of a role model for kids as far as pro athletes go. I mean, let's look at some of the diversities that he's had to fight through in order to achieve success in his life. First and foremost, I'm sure most of you guys have heard about his mother passing away from cancer during his time at Mississippi State. But what does he do? He fights through the adversity. He talks about all the lessons that his mother taught him as a kid, and, you know, she wouldn't want him to give up. So he was right back on the field after, you know, all the services. And, you know, he led Mississippi State to be the #1 ranked overall team for a while there during his junior year. Goes on to get drafted by his favorite team, America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. You guys know how that went. He was the 3rd string quarterback somehow through hard work, dedication, and a little bit of luck. Gotta admit, a little bit of luck. Some injuries to a few players ahead of him on the depth chart, and he's the starting quarterback. But even adversities during the season. Remember that Philadelphia Eagles game where he had that terrible first half, and he just comes back at the end and throws that touchdown to Jason Witten for the win? I mean, that's adversity on and off the field. And there's just a role model that kids can really point to, and parents can point to and say, you know what, if you're going to do it, try to do it like this guy. Try to do it the right way, the way that Dak did it. No excuses, just hard work, dedication, and in the end, it pays off. So I just want to take this time to applaud Dak Prescott. Thank you, sir, for being a good role model to these kids, because it's getting harder and harder these days to find them, especially when it comes to some of these pro athletes. There's a lot of guys out there doing a lot of good things. Unfortunately, the good guys don't always get the press. So, with that being said, before I get on out of here, tomorrow, if you guys have a pro athlete that you want to praise, you want to get some applause going for them, give them some recognition for being a good role model for these kids, go ahead and give me your guys' vote, give me your explanation, and we'll post that up on the station tomorrow. So let's get away from all the negative energy, and let's get into some of the positive. Who do you consider amongst the best role models amongst pro athletes? Call into the station tomorrow. Let's get that discussion started. Until then, y'all have a good night. Peace.